magic circle, which means I have particular training and experience in deceit and deception, not far removed now, I think, from alternative medicine. This is me at Penn and Teller Theatre in Las Vegas. Whoa! This is a rhinoceros. I show you a rhinoceros. This drawing was made in 1515 by Albrecht Dürer. At that time, the apothecaries, and I'm now a member of the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries in London, and the apothecaries would pinch the rhino's horn to make medicines. Naughty. We have learned our lesson, and although we still use the rhinoceros as the logo of the Society of Apothecaries, we now do all we can through charitable works to save the rhinoceros. The other thing about the rhinoceros, so the rhinoceros represents science. We've learned our lesson. We realise that the keratin in the rhino horn is nothing more than toenail clippings, and funnily enough, the Chinese don't use toenail clippings, but they will slaughter the rhino when they can, and they'll have rhino farms, but it's the same stuff whether it's a toenail clipping or a rhino horn, and that's alternative Chinese medicine. But we've learned through error of our ways, and we now try to save the rhino. The other thing about the rhino is it enables me to ask you a simple question: what is the difference between an orthopedic surgeon, such as myself, or indeed my friend John at the back, and a rhinoceros? What's the difference between an orthopedic surgeon and a rhinoceros? The answer is not a lot. We're both thick-skinned, horny, and charge a lot. Go on a journey. We're going to consider. My big problem as a doctor was sitting in the clinic, a patient saying to me, should I use alternative medicine? And I had to try and find out. And it's not easy finding out, because of course you can read lots of books about alternative medicine, but putting it all together in a coherent form hasn't been easy. So we're going to go on something of a journey, and then we're going to reveal the secrets. At all times, I want you to bear this lady in mind. This is an actress, let's call her Mrs. Smith. She's playing the part of a typical patient in the clinic, male or female. And she comes to me and she says, look, Mr. Rawlins, you're sorry to have to come and see you, but my GP has done all he can do nothing more for me, my hip still hurts, what can I do? And I say, well, here we are, it's totally worn out. If I give you a nice new metal hip like this one, I'll show you for an example, you're going to be a lot better, and it'll last you a lifetime. Almost certainly, save bearing in mind, nothing in science or medicine is absolutely so. And she says, well, what about alternative medicine? I've been reading the Daily Mail and ladies' magazines, and do alternative medicines help? And I've had to say, Mrs. Smith, I'm afraid I can't tell you, I don't know enough about it, but of course I have no objection should you wish to use alternative medicine. But I really can't advise you automatically. She said, perhaps you could find out, doctor, and write a book. So I did. And I've written a book, and if any of you are publishers, please see me afterwards. I'd be pleased to hear from you. I'm still trying to put it into some form of suitable book for you to read. What we're going to be talking about is supplementary, complementary, and alternative medicine. For some reason, the S usually gets dropped. I don't know why. And Simon Singh, who wrote Fermat's Theorem, and he was speaking at the Humans Conference, I think our friend may have met him there, and Professor S.R. Ernst, who was Professor of Complementary Medicine at Exeter. They wrote a very good book in 2008, and they described the sort of therapies I had in mind as any therapy not accepted by the mainstream, biologically implausible, untested, unproven, disproved, unsafe, only marginally beneficial, or which are placebos. I take medicine to mean pretty much everything. In context, I might mean, during the course of our discussion this evening, doctoring, sort of thing on what I do, yeah? Caring, I might mean as a medical practitioner. But in general, by medicine, I mean healthcare in general, the statutory regulated professions, those regulated by the Health Professions Council, all of which have their professional practice predicated on scientific principles. Does that mean they are perfect? Of course not. Science is not perfect. But it does mean that the basic premise is that they will try to be as scientific as possible, and they will try to improve on a scientific basis as much as possible. That's what we're going to be talking about. Well, does it matter? Why have I come along to see you this evening, apart from a very kind invitation from Andy? Well, there are lots of reasons evening. And have a look at this slide. There's Mrs. Smith. Can you see her? She's still there. And you'll see her on a number of slides. She's watching over us. Almost like a guardian angel, but certainly a critic of us. And she's keeping her eye on us, making sure we stick to the straight and narrow. And it does matter. Did you read that previous one? Tremendous expenditure on cans. You can read the numbers for yourself, and they go up by the minute. The National Centre for Can in America has spent billions on research and found no benefit greater than could be achieved by placebo. And that is just a fact. They're still looking. It does matter because all that time, money and trouble could be spent on improving conventional care. It also matters, I suggest, because there is an intellectual impact. I've heard of a gentleman who's thinking of coming this evening, but he uses an alternative medicine and decided not to come in case the illusion was broken. That's pretty much fair, isn't it? Somebody was telling me this, but they had a friend. Oh yes, Wayne was telling me that he had a friend who was thinking of coming, but he decided not to. There is a flight from science and society, particularly in the United States and America. It's quite remarkable. In America, our friends and colleagues there have quite a battle in getting this sort of message across. There is a detachment from reality and false hope offered to too many patients. Now, as doctors, we offer patients hope, nothing else. But we try to be ethical and offer honest hope, not false hope. So it does matter if there are perpetrators doing otherwise. Patients can deny and delay conventional treatment. I have many examples, but just look at anti-vaccination. This is particularly interesting because my own MP, Sarah Wollaston, who was a student when I was a senior registrar at Guy's, she's now our MP and chairman recently of the Select Committee on Health. And these are her figures presented in the Houses of Parliament. Brixham, 94% of susceptible children have MMR vaccination. Measles, mumps, rubella. With 94% of susceptible children vaccinated, herd immunity means if you take along your little grandchild or another unvaccinated child to Brixham for their fish and chips, they probably or almost certainly will not get measles, mumps, rubella. However, just up the road, 10 miles away, in her own constituency at Totnes, only 70% of children are vaccinated, and if you take your grandchild or young person there, very stand a chance of getting in measles, mumps, rubella should an outbreak occur, as happened only last year in Swansea. So these are real problems and they really can occur. Why is Totnes different from Brixham, you may ask? Well, the fact is, it's just a fact of life that Totnes is the alternative capital of the United Kingdom, and this is not me, some other jadist has done that. And to give them their credit, the town council left that 2 years before they just recently. And they thought it was a good joke as well. We know that this subject matters because the Daily Mail says so. So if the Daily Mail says that this is a subject which matters, then you can be sure it does. And this is what it said that Charles held secret meetings to lobby, and he does, you know this, to lobby for homeopathy in particular, but also other alternative medicines. And Mrs. Smith is still up in the corner keeping her eye on him. The House of Lords reported in 2000 and on different systems. There are many, many different alternative medicine systems. We are not going to consider them all this evening, but I'm just telling you what some of them are. And cans offer alternatives to orthodox medicine. I like to think cans as chemistry. Why not? The word I just invented. The alternative medicine field is full of people inventing terms, not terms, using language and images and fluencies, all sorts of strange language. And I thought, oh, well, if they can do it, so can I. So I came up with the terms chemistry to represent cans. Chemists are people, obviously, who practice cans of any sort. Of any sort. But chemists, oh, they're rulers, and cannees are people who go along to see chemists. And that makes reasonable good sense. And they can have fun with the English language, so can I. Well, this was the House of Lords. They identified some cans which are professionally organised. And I've got a few words to say about each of those in a little bit, not too much. Group 2, you can read for yourselves what they are. Group 3 in 2 parts. Why it wasn't Group 3 and Group 4, I don't know. That's my house of thoughts for you. So it's Group 3, A and B. I don't know what that you can read for yourselves. Those are the sort of practices and systems of healthcare in those groups. And the Prince Charles himself created the foundation for integrated mental health, as he called it, and he showed interest in integrating all those other things, plus these, in with the NHS. He's quite keen that you, the British taxpayer, should pay your tax dollar to practitioners practicing these practices. That's what he's keen on. And like it or not, whether you're a Republican or a staunch monarchist, the fact is he does have an influence. You can argue whether he should or shouldn't. The fact is he does. The British Complementary Medicine Association has numerous, and I've only selected a few of the many alternative medicines which are represented by the British Complementary Medicine Association. So those are the sort of things we're going to be talking about. And I had to think, well, where does it all come from? How in the 21st century is it that we are entertaining any thought at all about these group of medical treatments? Well, if you look 1,000 years before Christ, it was pretty obvious what bad health was. Bad health was the result of displeasure by the gods. It's obvious. So you might placate the gods and you might get better. And if you were a Greek, you placated Asclepius. A little bit later, the Romans overran the Greek Empire and they changed his name, but they kept the principle and he became Easterlatus. St. Jack and St. George description. Incidentally, up to 600 there. The Greeks had 600 gods of various kinds. The exact number, of course, is not possible to tell, but certainly the multiple. That's the framework, the philosophical framework at that time. Wales began to get put his feet back on, and he joined the Athenians, skeptics in the power, and set this aside. And by the time you get to 600, logic was raising its philosophical head, the dogmatics were still expressing their opinion, their dogma. Greek for opinion is dogma. It seems to me, people would say, whereas the skeptics, with a K, Greeks had no C, the skeptomai means to think, but not just to think any old way, but to think critically. And the skeptics, and that's who you are now, are thinking critically about these issues. And 400 years before Christ, Hippocrates turned up. Now, Hippocrates, we don't know what he wrote. His books were all written by his students and his acolytes. But he rejected gods as the cause of disease. He didn't go with that. He knew about the 4 elements which form the basis of the physical universe. The Babylonians had suggested this many centuries before, and he stuck with air, water, fire, and earth as being the 4 main elements. And he said that the 4 humours of blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile were associated. And the job of a doctor was to balance these elements until the patient got better. And this idea was still prevalent at the time of the Greek physician who practiced under the Roman Empire, something I think was Roman, but originally Greek. And he added temperaments: sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, melancholic. And this idea of humorism, that's what doctors did. And that idea lasted 2 millennia. For 2,000 years, doctors, physicians, anybody else in healthcare, anywhere in the world, practically, including China and India, the other 2 great centers, had the idea of humorism and sought to balance, by whatever means, and they used different means in China from India, but they sought to balance these various elements, and we still today in alternative medicine come across a number of practitioners who see this magical balance. Well, it may exist, I can't prove it doesn't, but I just don't have any evidence that it does. Eventually, Western thought, we'll just look at Europe, Western thought caught up, and Francis Bacon became Viscount St. Alban, and eventually died when he was stuffing a chicken with snow to see if it would preserve it, but you don't know if it caught cold. But Francis Bacon wrote a new work in 1620, in which he set out what we think of as a modern scientific method. Now, science has been existing since time immemorial, but it hadn't been organised as Bacon suggested. William Harvey wrote about the movement of the heart, and he said, you know, I think Galen was wrong. I don't think there is two circulations, and the point is, I've done some experiments. And I've carried out some observations. No, really? Yes. And I think there's only one circulation. But it was many, many years. Physicians said, you know, I would rather err with Galen than bother with this new chap, this Harvey chap. No, and that sort of attitude is, of course, prevalent today. We've only in 1992 started using the word evidence-based medicine in a formal sense. There is a lot wrong with the practice and principles of EEM. Medical students, we have an hour or two talking about the advantages and the disadvantages. But the fact is, we at least have a label to identify the philosophical approach, the practical approach to dealing with modern challenges of scientific medicine. And most recently, that's why I put this in, only in June 2014, the BMJ is trying to reactivate a campaign, not for real beer like this pub does, but EEM. Ben Golding, some of you may know, has written a super book, Bad Pharma, just a couple of years ago, in which he really blows the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not coming here today to be critical about alternative medicine. I'm critical about any medicine that ain't honest, and that ain't up to speed, and that ain't scientific, and there's a lot wrong with the modern pharmaceutical industry, which I'm not going to describe this evening. You know, publication bias being the biggest one. They just don't publish results that don't suit. That's the biggest problem. So we are beginning, or what's not beginning, we are continuing to criticise ourselves as well as people using the alternatives. So here's the first secret I've already told you. Cans do work. Cans do work, but not as the regular sort of habits would wish them to believe. There are two effects, and I find in my readings about chemistry and CAM and homeopathy and osteopathy and all the others, that they will not differentiate between these effects, which occurs every time I say believe to you. You feel right? Pretty good? No. You say, how are you? How are you? And I hope, if I smile, and my tone is reasonable and pleasant, I reciprocate. Sometimes a guy asks, depends on that. Have you met before? Would you like to meet again? Well, it's nice, three of us. So, yeah, we all have that effect, and that's fine. But the real question that Cam has to answer, and doesn't answer satisfactorily, is there any effect? Sorry, there's a button on the side I aimed at the press. Is there any effect, type 2 effect I call it, on the pathology in the course of a specific illness? And the answer is no. The scientific evidence for CAN has been reviewed by no less than Bach herself, who is the director of the Complementary Alternative Medicine Institute at the National Institutes of Health. You can see what he says, and nothing more than cleverly packaged placebos. And his book, Snake Oil Science, is one for you to read if you're sufficiently interested. But otherwise, they're cleverly packaged placebos, except, of course, placebos do work. That's the secret. You can go now and have a drink. That's it. Yeah, people are comforted by placebos. And that's great. That's simple. That's what we doctors want to do. We want to comfort people as well as cure whatever disease may be. But in the case of alternative medicine, there is no treatment affecting the disease. After all, here's a question for you, and now you're all in a position to answer. And as if this was a test, 95-98% get it right. What do you call alternative medicine that works?
Medicine.
How do we know? We carry out trials. We've been doing trials for a long time. Nebuchadnezzar took the Jews off to Babylon, and actually they got on very well. The Jews became the guards. And Nebuchadnezzar said, look, I want your Jewish guards, Daniel. I want you to feed them the same as my troops. I want you to feed them meat, big and big and strong. And Daniel said, I'd rather give them legume, pulses. And they did a trial. It's written up in the Bible. They did a trial, and guess what? Daniel's troops were healthier on their diet rather than this meaty stuff. So, clinical trials are not new. I like to quote Lynn because he was a ship surgeon like myself in the Royal Navy, and he looked at scurvy, and he carried out controlled trials, and he is given the credit for the first doctor to carry out not just trials between two treatments, but to have controls. And that's slightly one step up the scale of exactitude, if you like. He also reviewed other trials. That's another secret of Lynn's work. He didn't just do what he did, he reviewed other trials which were going on, and of course he proved that scurvy, you know what it was, didn't know anyone out there in the sea, but whatever it was, scurvy could be treated by oranges and lemons, of which there were not many in the parts of the West Indies where the Navy was fighting and working, but there were plenty of lions. And so, about 50 years after Lynn's work, the Navy issued an order that all ships would have lime juice for the men to squeeze and to drink to help combat scurvy. And of course it worked. And the Americans ended up calling British sailors, British people often, lions as a result. Here, not there. Not there, Mesmer was an Austrian physician working in Paris, and he had the idea that if he had iron filings, magnetized iron filings in a big bowl, and if people could put iron rods in that big bowl, that the magnetism would help cure their diseases, which it did because their diseases were largely hysteric, that's the fact. And then he found over the course of time, with a little bit of trials, he found he didn't need the iron filings, he could just do it by the swish. There would be a fluence from him to the other person, and that his soul, his innermost being, his soul would be transferred and help heal the other person. That's what Mesmer thought. Because he spoke French, he was using French, he called this, the French word for soul, which is animal, he called this animal magnétisme, animal magnetism. Nothing to do with magnetism of iron filings. Well, Louis XVI said, I think that's a lot of nonsense, please find out for me. And he carried out the trial, or arranged for one to be carried out, including amongst the 17 commissioners, Benjamin Franklin, who was in Paris because he was the American ambassador, Antoine Lavoisier, the world's greatest chemist, and Joseph Ignace Guillotin, who was a doctor, who was so humane that he imported a German head-dropping device, which was much more efficient in making a mess that hitherto had been done. In fact, it was such a good device, it was subsequently used in the Revolution for chopping off the head of the world's greatest chemist. Because Antoine Lavoisier was also a hated taxpayer. So, be careful what you do. Over in America, the idea of magnetism across the Atlantic and hypnotism came a later term, much the same thing. And Elisha Perkins patented, the first American patent, patented metallic tractors about 3 centimeters long, made of different, secret alloys. And these secret alloys are now £5,000 each at the prices he was charging. You can't get them in this country, more than you want to buy, but his price was equivalent of large sums of money. And these tractors were used to draw out the illness. So, sir, if you've got a bit of gout on your ear, I would use this tractor to draw out the nasty fluids. Not stick it in. I know there's a point on the tractor, but that is what happened. It was to draw it out. Well, that's the thing. That was the theory. And the practice. And Elisha and his son Benjamin came to England, and they made a lot of money selling their bits of Now, here is a giveaway picture of Benjamin. That's Benjamin. There he is, one tractor in his mouth. It's very hygienic. And this one is not being stuck in. I know it looks like it's being stuck in, but it's not. It's the fiery gout being drawn out from this poor gentleman. And so these tractors were used, and John Haygarth retired from Chester, where he'd been a GP and worked on smallpox trials, one thing or another, and he retired to Bath. And he is credited with carrying out the first placebo-controlled trials. So Haygarth obtained some of these tractors. He copied them made out of wood and painted them up to look the same. And he had treatments of patients, and he proved quite conclusively that whether you use a wooden tractor or a metal tractor, the result is the same. In other words, the metal tractor is nonsense. And he wrote about this and presented this as a paper, which verged war on the imagination as a cause and cure of the diseases of the body, exemplified by fictitious tractors and epidemical convulsions. And he presented this at the Philosophical and Literary Society, Scientific and Literary Society of Bath, which you can still go to this day. The third secret then is that medicine that we practice today uses scientific methods. And as Richard Feynman said, science is what we've learned about how to keep fooling ourselves, and Feynman should know because he helped develop the atomic bomb, apart from being bomber. On the other hand, in a letter to the Hebrews, which may or may not have been written by St. Paul, who knows, but it's certainly a letter to the Hebrews, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And faith is a very real thing. It's just not seen. And it's very real to those who have it, and pretty unreal to those who don't have it. Yes? All right. This is where alternative medicine folk are not happy. Obviously, faith comes into beliefs about alternative medicine, some degree of intuition and opinion. Well, it seems to you. Anecdotes, famous phrase, and not data. But if you can put a copper bracelet on and you feel better, and if you can tell me, I put a copper bracelet on and I don't think shoulder bracelet on. Then I say, hey, if you use a copper bracelet, that's a lot cheaper than a sugar or whatever. So there's a hierarchy of evidence. Evidence is not one thing, and I'm not going to give you a lecture on evidence, other than to say, emphasize the point, evidence isn't one thing, there's a hierarchy of evidence, and alternative medicine does not get much further somewhere around there. There are case control, maybe there are a few cohort studies, but once you get into randomization, whoa, you certainly start to get into that. Can be dropped off. This is a perfectly reasonable way to doctor. There are many doctors who treat patients pretty much along these lines. Hence you get a quadruple bypass, tails into baby aspirin, and probably you'd find out how such a trial would be equivalent, who knows. Well, some practitioners, and I just have a quick couple of slides about quacks. First, we will advertise my next talk, which I might be invited to give to you if you like this one, called quacks. But this is what a quack is, just quickly. Ben Johnson knew what a quack was. And quacks are people who just, that's important. Why do so many doctors seem to be engaged with chemistry? Well, quackery can be lucrative, but I like this book. This is a good gag. I can't claim it for myself. The profit motive and the profit motive. It's there are two profit motives, and it just depends how you say. This joke does not work in French. Not even any years old. It is a matter of branding and marketing. The word alternative medicine was a bit challenging, and for some years, complementary medicine was the trending term, and now integrated medicine. In America, integrative, subtle word, slightly different, but more or less the same thing. Except Josephine Briggs says, yeah, one side, integrated medicine, incorporating these various strange ideas from modern medicine, is a good thing. Yeah, it's great. But on the other end, it's just rebranding snake. It's not supported by evidence and it's not proven to be safe. So the fifth secret, I I quote Harriet Hall, who not only is a doctor but a fighting pilot, or has been. Integrated medicine is a shameless thief. I like Mark Crispin's idea that if you integrate fantasy with reality, you do not instantiate reality. In other words, if you mix cow pie with apple pie, it doesn't make cow pie better. And that's what we're challenging, this idea of integrating pseudoscience, which was Charles White to do, with science. It doesn't make science, in our case the health service, any better or any more rigorous. And it harms the rigor which is necessary in my view to science. I would rather call it complementary. I love inventing. These guys, why should the devil have the best tuners, you know? I mean, I'm capable of inventing silly things, but just like they are. And they can invent all sorts of energies whispering around the universe. Complementary. Complementary because it adds spice and flavour, but there's no functional effect. And it adds to the pleasure, but not the process of this. So I think it's complementary medicine, if you want another term. And if you really want to be naughty, you can call it all these cans charismatic medicine, from the Greek, from charisma, which means to smoke. In other words, anybody who believes cans must be smoking something. And all right. Right on. They can be silly, I can be silly. Now, what we're really talking about is this. That's what Novella thinks, and he works at a pretty reputable university, and basically promoting a diverse set of untested practices that might even be fraudulent. Why are doctors not more critical? You don't hear doctors being really critical. When Mrs. Smith comes to my clinic, I don't say, don't be a silly old Mrs. Smith, no. I say, well, of course, yes, if you think it helps you. You know, why don't you put a cock band on both wrists? You have balance, you stop walking around in circles. You don't say that. The fact is, clinicians, doctors who work at the bedside, are not scientists. We're not employed as scientists. We use the scientific method, but we're not employed as scientists. We do not seek the truth in the same way as a scientist would. We actually want to care for people. We want to offer them understanding and consolation for their present suffering. We want to give them hope for the future and love at all times. And the fact that we accept can by our casual attitude towards it does not imply endorsement. And modern medicine, we've given up medical paternalism, doctor knows best, and now we are expected to involve patients and to retain involved consent. That means we have to tell the patients the truth about any proposed treatment. And if we as doctors are going to say, put on the copper bracelet, we better be able to explain to them what evidence we have the copper bracelet, and I'm using that as a general metaphor for all the hands, what evidence there might be that it does work. And here's a chap who's getting informed consent. This prescription won't make you feel better, but it will stop your whining and make everybody else feel better. Right, let's just quickly look at some of these counts. Okay, here we go. Samuel Harlan was a very good doctor. No, he wasn't. He was a good doctor because he rejected the conventions of his day, which were dreadful. Regular medical practice of his day involved purging people, bleeding them, polypharmacy, 50 different compounds in one drug were given quite regularly by orthodox regular physicians, many of which were toxic, mercury, lead, and so on. And he got rid of all that. He said, I'm not going to give my patients all that nonsense. Brilliant. A lot of his patients got better, and certainly made them worse, which was super. But he got a little bit wonky. He felt that diseases were caused by the waivers of the vital force. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to identify the nature of this vital force, and nor has anyone since, even though we have now identified the Higgs boson, and we know about the fourth fundamental forces of nature. Nobody has yet found the fifth, and the vital force is certainly not one of them. There's more than one Nobel Prize for anybody who can find the vital force. This was Harlan's principles, you'll know them well, like cures like. And the British Homeopathic Association currently says that Hahnemann carried out experiments which were called provings. And you will speak to a homeopath, maybe there's one here this evening, I hope so, that's great, you will confirm that your treatments, your therapies are proved. Except that's the wrong word put there. Proof then means test. Yes, Hahnemann tested it. But that's not the same as proof, as normally we mean it in the English language, which carries a feeling of validity and accuracy. If you want to mean prove, you use a different German word. Proof is an experiment, not a proof. So even the British Homeopathic Association can't even translate the German correctly. You wonder what else they have. The law of infinite decimals, that's the big joke, of course. The unit of mother tincture is put in 99 units, whatever it might be, a mil or a gallon, whatever, of water, sterile water. That's 1 in 100, 1 in 10 squared, if you like, and 1 in 100, 1 centimetre. So the homeopath will call that the 1C product. He will now have 1C. But that is repeated by the test tubes are shaken, and that potentizes and releases the dynamic energy, and that is repeated, standard potency, 30 times. So this dilution, suppression, potentization is carried out 30 times, which is 1 in 30 times 10 squared, 1 in 10 to the power 60, there we are, 1 in 10. That's the dilution. That's the dilution. And you must laugh that there are only 10 to the 80 atoms in the universe. So, it's pretty unlikely that any one of your compound here would dilute them that much. Yes, you can buy them. Here we are. I just wanted to show you this because that's the 30C. You can find this in Boots the Chemist. 30C, and then that's what the C means. It's been diluted that much. And then dripped onto these little lactose sugar pills. That's what homeopathy is. I bought some. Oh yes, so much fun. I bought some. And you can go on the website and you can ask Ainsworth's homeopathic pharmacist to make you up something to any degree of potentization you wish. I chose 30 because it's the standard. And I chose 3 compounds to be made up. I could have chosen that. I could have chosen 1, I chose 3. I chose homeopathic tap water. I chose Rohit, oh yes, big green drop. But don't worry, ain't nothing in there, so it doesn't really matter very much. Oh, and just for fun, I did Tyrannosaurus Rex. So Mr. Ainsworth, his company, sold me some Tyrannosaurus Rex. Diluted. I mean, don't be upset about the dinosaur because it was just taken from a shin bone tibia of an animal found in Germany. But don't worry, because as I say, there's so little in there that it'll last forever. So you needn't worry about using fossils in that way. Now, why did I choose Ainsworth's? Well, the reputable company. Because Her Majesty has given it a warrant, such as Prince Charles. And the warrant, you want a royal warrant, you have to meet the standards of Her Majesty and his princes. And I have written to Prince Charles and asked him what the standards are, and he won't tell me. And I've written again and asked him what are the standards that Purdy have to meet in order to provide him shotguns. It has to be. All shotguns, shot weapons, Charles, Purdy has one, are proved. In Birmingham, they're all shot before they get the game, in case one blew up in his face. So they will go on a testary and they're shot, and he meet the standard and they get a warrant. But he won't tell me. I accepted it. Very courteous, wrote back and said that the Prince doesn't enter into discussion on these matters. But he's quite prepared to promote them. Don't tell me that that's a promotion. And so that's why I really used the patience with the back. I think you should be stand up and be happy. Now, after Hahnemann, beyond the wind, I think that's what I thought. Homeopathy, Margaret Tyler went to America and learned how to choose a doctor. She came back and practiced in London, and her rich father, Sir Henry Tyler, paid for the Tyler wing of the London Homeopathic Hospital. Sir John Weir was a GP in Glasgow. He looked after George VI, the Queen's father. George VI's horse, Hypericon, won 1,000 guineas. That's good. Why was the horse called Hypericum? Because Hypericum is St. John's wort, which is a well-known homeopathic remedy for dicturation. Ooh, what does that tell us about George VI? What does the question perhaps new. Oh, was there something else to say there? What's the last line there? Okay, we're back. Flower remedies, you'll still come across those. He died at 52. He's also depressed. And the London Homeopathic Hospital has now changed its name. There we are. There's 2 Royal London Hospitals in London now. 2 of them. One called the Royal London Hospital, the other one called the Royal London Hospital. Except they put integrated medicine tag on the end for some distinction. I think this is pretty deceitful, but that's just my opinion. This is another well-known alternative treatment, osteopathy. He was a magnetic healer. He did all the magnetism, the sort of stuff, like Anton Mesmer. And then he realized that if he actually put his hands on patients and manipulated them, they'd feel a bit better. Well, yeah, yes they would. Massage is nice. And he emphasizes that what he was doing was releasing the blood supply to the parts. And this is how osteopathy works, by releasing the blood and improving the blood flow and just really unobstructed. And this is basically what osteopathy will do. The next guy is a bit more controversial. He was a grocer, he became a magnetic healer and worked probably almost certainly for a time with Still. Certainly they were both trained by Paul Custer, and they became magnetic healers, both of them, and he set up a rival organisation which he called Chiropractic, founded, this is important, any chiropractors here better notice this is what you're doing, Chiropractic founded upon different principles from those of medicine. I can say that again. Medicine is scientific for a start. The philosophy of chiropractic is founded upon vital functions performed by innate intelligence. So that's what your chiropractor is doing, is shoving your innate intelligence around. No, for those of you who want your innate intelligence moved out, that's great. I would recommend you go to a chiropractor. Just so long as he tells you what he's doing. If he doesn't get informed consent on this basis, then maybe he's trying to have you on. This leaves you much judge. There we are, this is what Palmer said, this is my words, what Palmer said. When the control of the intelligence transmits mental impulses, you're going to be better. And Palmer said we must have a religious head. Joseph Smith, of course, was the guy who founded Mormons. Mormons, that's right. So that's what Palmer thought of himself. And this was some conversation which the power of reckon will enable improvement of that innate intelligence. 2 more osteopaths beyond the twin goes on, doesn't it? I've looked it up in the rhyming dictionary, there aren't many more. Beyond the craniosacral therapy, if you will come across this, I'm very cross about this because craniosacral therapists had a big blurb in the newspapers earlier this year treating post-traumatic stress disorder in the Royal Marines. Well, I work with the Royal Marines. I am concerned with their PTSD, and I don't even mess about quite easily. But there we are. They attune subtle rhythms, gently moving the bones of the skull, including in babies. Why everybody would want to move the bone of the skull unless it is traumatic damage and needing restitution? I don't know, but that's what they say. Herbalism. Well, throughout history we have herbs, and herbal medicine likes to call itself herbalism, that sounds a bit more trendy, and also other words, botanicals, that's a word you come across, botanicals, phytotherapy. It sounds more scientific, doesn't it? Instead of saying, oh, I'm a herbalist, you say, I'm a phytotherapist. Well, I'm a social phytotherapist. It sounds more grand. And I want to distinguish that between phytotherapy, and it's not the same as phytotherapy. Phytotherapy is treatment by dogs. Phyto dog. I know that's Well, I think it's funny, but my wife said pharmaceuticals are refined, medicinal herbs are not refined, and they cannot be sold or promoted as medicines. Herbalism itself is fighting some vital force in the herbs which produce, etc., etc. And Calhoun says herbalism involves giving patients unknown doses, some of which they themselves. And this chapter is concerned. Side effects may include hairy lungs, heart giggles, great eyeballs, euphoric knees, hair, coughing, nostalgia, love of future, and a loss of desire. There are side effects, and you cannot sell herbal medicines as treatments for anything. These Dutchy herbal tonics were sold as treatments. The advertising standard of authority said you mustn't do that. You can claim they are food supplements, and this is the current box, food supplements, but you cannot claim they're used to treat. So the phrase used to treat had to be removed. But you can still buy them on boots. This did not amuse the owner of the Dutch original. That's there for those of you who know Dartmouth, near where I live, and that's Simon Drew's picture, Killer Whales. But the owner of the Dutch originals was not best. He had to end his way. Acupuncture, we know about acupuncture, put little pins in, and this is an ancient diagram. There's only one meridian here, but there are many meridians. Different acupuncturists will have different diagrams. Anywhere between 12 meridians is quite common because there are 12 main rivers in China, or 365 meridians on some charts, which is pretty closely related to the number of days in the year. And so there's a tremendous variety of meridians, and the idea is that you balance the yin and the yang by puncturing these acupuncture points along the meridians. Now, we call it acupuncture because the Latin for a needle is acus. That's the Latin for a needle. Needle acus, and therefore acupuncture. Well, I'd rather use the Greek. The Greek for a needle is baloney. And I think that would be a better term to apply to this form. Don't take my word for it. This is from Good Again and Novella. You've come across there. And if you really want to reference, I mean, you've seen the articles if you seriously want to reference. But I just wanted to show you I do have some references. And there are phrases, rings, thrice, acupuncture, placebo. So how do cans work? Wait. Everyone's waiting up for the big sheet. How do cans work? Well, as you might have guessed, the answer is simple. Works the same way as everything else. Now, what I mean, of course, is the same neurotransmitters that encourage the earth to move. The same neurotransmitters also pleasure in general. Pleasure in a football match or not pro, beautiful building, whatever. And dopamine particularly is the pleasure principle. But there are 50 odd neurotransmitters that we know about and counting. And this is very simple, some of them. I mean, here's a couple of don't suck on the end of the name. It's a very simple compound. And I now want to invite you to shut your eyes if you think you're a bit sensitive, because I am going to show you in the next slide a depiction of the human sex act here on the screen. So I will tell you when it's reasonable that you might open your eyes. So let me okay. Just shut up. Everyone's embarrassing. Okay? This is the human sex act. Here we are. It's all happening here. The ascending neuron is going, and this is an enlargement. That sort of thing. And here are the neurotransmitters. It feels good. Yes. And what's going on at any time we feel good. So, the big question I had to ask myself is why did Camus believe in chemistry? Why do people go along with the flow of these strange beliefs? Well, unfortunately, a lot of them are disillusioned. They just don't feel comfortable with what it is. You know, they just feel something more must be done. This is particularly the case feel the doctor can sort them out and so on. So they disillusion, and instead of accepting that situation, that's the way that the cards dealt, they will look for something else. And you can't blame them. I just think they must know what the truth is about the cans. There's no doubt that many cans are very charismatic. And they will put white coats on, they'll drape stethoscopes around their neck, they will give themselves titles of doctor even though they do not have a doctorate and are not registered medical practitioners. They will give every impression of having charts on the wall of meridians and skeletons and all sorts. They will give every impression that they know what they're talking about. So there's tremendous charisma there. And of course we've all grown up, haven't we, most of us here now, through the 1960s, sex, drugs and rock and roll. I remember inventing that in London in 1960s. And this whole new age flavour is prevalent. I call it the allure of wudo. Wu is Chinese for nothingness, and do is Japanese for way or a path. And some people just like way or nothing. It just suits their personalities, it suits their philosophies, and they're comfortable with that approach. I call it wudo. Or other people might call it woo. But that's just an understanding of the music which I'm speaking of. Does that mean that? Basically, people are born with psychological crutch and comfort blanket. I can't blame them, but they are looking for consolation, hope, and love. Of course they are. Given great things. There are deep psychological elements, and I've looked at many. There are 30 odd that I've identified. I'm only going to tell you or show you a few. There is a lot of denialism, which means, as I've said there, choosing to deny reality. It just helps people cope with the truth. And unfortunately, it does mean that some patients are going to be rejecting scientific evidence. And you hear skeptics in this part of the scene probably won't be comfortable with denialism. There are people who are just frankly deluded. That's an easy to confirm. Trying to do magic tricks for children is not easy. In fact, the most difficult branch of magic. I don't do it. I find it easier doing highly intelligent members of the public, such as yourselves. And that sorts of deceptions do not work. But people are vulnerable and gullible, they're duped by the language and advertising. Yeah, that's sad, isn't it? You just have to bear all those points in mind. There are a couple of other points about psychology. Cognitive bias, and this is what comes up with Ben Goldacre's book when he talks about publication bias. People only will publish research that suits their area. Confirmation bias is much the same thing on a personal basis. You just think that you know enough about it and your thinking has gone wrong. And cognitive dissonance occurs. This dissonance occurs when people challenge your fundamental belief. And that's very stressful, psychologically. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to talk much more about it, other than to say there are deep psychological reasons why people take to alternative medicine, and why they will resist challenge. They are not comfortable. Our friend this evening, Reed's friend, does not come because he felt uncomfortable lest he be challenged. And frankly, I guess I probably would have challenged him. But it's a shame he's not here. And please give him my love. Please tell him that the fluence is with him. He was with him. If you would just let him know. Yeah, there are a lot of fallacies around. The fact of the matter is, even the worst cancer can get better. Remember, spontaneous remission does occur. Sometimes people know why, sometimes they don't, but it does occur. Bertrand Russell, the challenge often that chemists will float, will say, well, you prove there isn't. Well, Bertrand Russell said that's daft. If I was to say there is a teapot going around in orbit between Earth and the Sun, just outside my specifically, you would regard that as crazy, and it would be for me to prove that there is a teapot, not for everybody else to prove there isn't one. So the burden of proof lies with those who make unfalsifiable claims, and chemists do not stand that test. The biggest problem I've had as a practicing doctor is this one in Latin. You can see what it is after this because of this. Correlation does not imply causation. It's very well known, but that's the biggest problem I have. When I put on a tell. Yeah, but it does not mean the copper bracelet. So you can't, once you get down to the copper bracelet works, it's very hard. It's not wise. The fact is, coincidences do happen. I mean, there are many coincidences. I've just shown you one for a bit of fun. The divorce rate in Maine plotted against the per capita consumption of margarine. So, those of you who want to get divorced, go to Maine and eat plenty of margarine, and this proves quite conclusively that you'll have a successful divorce. The correlation is 99%. Mathematical, all worked out. And there are many other examples that I won't bother with, but that's just one example. So, let's get down and dirty for the next 5 minutes the inner secrets of accounts. Well, Socrates knew about it. That was a long time ago. And these works, but you need a charm as well. And Henry Beecher wrote about the powerful placebo in 1955. And placebos are very powerful. Arthur Shapiro used the same title with acknowledgement, saying that history of medicine is largely the history of placebo effects. Now, what are placebo effects? Placebo effects rely on the power of suggestion. Put on this copper bracelet, you will feel better. Harnessing the imagination, just imagine it, and it enables imaginative experiences. Focused concentration facilitated by whatever therapeutic practice you wish, whether it be manipulating a neck, or whether it be putting a pin in, or taking a tablet, or taking a herb, whatever. And that will facilitate this placebo effect. The word placebo is from the Latin I will it please. The patient's belief reports benefit, but there is no effect on the actual disease. Well, I've invented another term. Oh, he goes on, doesn't it? Comparing treat and do the way or path, and placebo the way or path that leads it. And those who study or use these effects are placebos. So now you've studied these effects. Now you are all placeboists. You, sir, are a consultant placebo. Tell your friends when you go home, you did not go to Skepticism Club, you went to be inducted as a consultant placebo. And then charge them for your advice. Now, placebo may be an inertial appeal, you can read for yourself, I'm not going to read that. Archie Cochrane, never mind who he was, except that he did a lot of scientific work in medicine, that's all you need to know very much about. The effects of placebo in randomized controlled trials is very large, and the use is to be encouraged in the correct place. Now, this is controversial. There are doctors who say you shouldn't lie to patients. If they're going to give them placebo, you should tell them that they're giving them placebo. You should give them placebo. So, please. Yeah. If you give people placebo pills, depending on all these features, so the bigger ones are more effective, so placebo is not one thing. Placebo response, placebo effect is not just one thing. It will vary. Even in the more expensive looking boxes. And this is what we show. This is a randomized controlled trial. We've studied this and studied placebos and shown all that looks and more into this. Responses may be diminished if you tell the patient you're giving them placebo, but they're not entirely irreflective. Even if you tell patients, well, it's only a placebo, this that. Oh, yeah, it works for me. No, people still find that it works. And the people often can guess whether they have placebo in any event. Now, here's a secret for you. I don't know if we use this hypnosis, but I do. Not too much on stage, certainly chemistry does. And clinical hypnosis, treating people, stopping smoking and so on. Experimental hypnosis in psychology labs, stage magicians, all magicians use a degree of hypnosis, although we don't always take people down to deep trance. We certainly create hypnotic suggestions, and we do harness people's imagination. Ooh, which is magic. Ooh, we have to believe it's magic. As they do with that. But, because we're magicians. And we enable people to have imaginative experience. That's what hypnosis is. Focused concentration, facilitated by responsive expectancy. Patients expect, people expect to have a response, they will get one. And if they don't have a response, they won't. So, no hypnotist ever hypnotizes anyone. All hypnosis is auto-hypnosis. People hypnotize themselves, but I, as a hypnotist, can facilitate, enable people to experience different levels of like trance, not sleep. Hypnosis is not sleep, in spite of the word. And we sometimes call it sleep, but it isn't really. So, hypnosis and placebo are pretty much the same thing. So I'm suggesting that the chemists, people who practice chemistry, are basically hypnotizing people. Just lie down here. I'm going to put a pin in here, in a soft voice, and maybe music. You know? They're going to feel better. Hypnosis, placebo, pretty much the same thing. All mediated through neurotransmitters. Simple as that. There is a secret here. You've got to get informed consent. So the patients must be told that there is no reproducible evidence that proposed treatment has any effect on placebo, but it's quite legitimate to say to a patient, you might have some worthwhile benefit. And I suggest that unless you do obtain fully informed consent, then the practitioner has honesty, integrity, and maybe fraudulent. And pretty much at the end now, cans can do harm. Yes, there are adverse effects due to heavy metals in some homeopathic preparations. The nocebo effect refers to the harmful effect of comparable to placebo, but nocebo. False hope is engendered, stress is engendered, and spinal manipulation can cause strokes. The American Cardiac Association has just today, I only just seen it on the internet site, just issued a warning about chiropractic manipulation of the cervical spine, causing or increasing the risk of the potential possibility of all those contingent phrases for getting off life charges, causing stroke. Can, let's say, illness behaviours entrenched. One does wonder, I mentioned anti-vaccination, I do wonder whether Steve Jobs would still be alive. Statistically, there is an 8% chance he would still be alive after getting his pancreatic enzyme. Had he taken trouble regularly. He did, he ended up with a liver transplant. It was all too late. He stuck with alternative medicine far too long, and he died. Even today, Aberlite claim in Kenya that homeopathy can cure AIDS. Aberlite, a charity registered by the British Charity Commission, has been raising money in this country to provide homeopathic treatment for people in Kenya with AIDS. Claiming they wouldn't be able to make that claim in this country, but they do make that claim in Kenya. So, yeah, there are harmful effects. But the biggest harmful effect, waste of resources, I think, flight from science. Well, you've paid attention, thank you so much. And I'm now in a position, those of you who contact me, I can send you by, wherever it is at, Fluence in the Sky, I can send you a certificate which you can download and hang on the wall of your loo, and certifying that you are now procedures, and you're not only that, but consultant procedures. So what are you going to do now that you're consultant procedures? Well, I hope you will exercise honesty and integrity about the subject, juggling discrimination, and use critical thinking. Taking time and trouble to encourage patients to ask questions. That's in a sense the real procedure. And as procedures, I hope you will now go home. You will offer consolation for people suffering, such as they imagine it might be, some degree of hope for the future, and love at all times. And support, one example, love is the most important. Thank you very much indeed.
wants to grab a quick drink, you can say 10 minutes, and then I'm sure Richard will be more than happy to answer some questions. Thanks very much.
Come back.